Hey everyone, welcome back. And first off, thank you to those of you who've been watching these new videos on this new channel. Those of you who came over from Homemade Home. And for those of you who are new, you can check out that channel as well, where I'm kind of showing, practicing what I preach. So that channel's name is Homemade Home, where I do renovations of cheap houses that I buy. So if you're interested in that type of thing, go have a look. It is basically me just doing exactly what I'm talking about in these videos. That's what this whole channel is going to be based off of. But then I will get into other topics that I'm less familiar with, but that is more of me learning along with you. So just kind of telling you what I figure out along the way. I just got a question. So the topic of this video is going to be, I have it just as risky, but the topic is just, is real estate risky? And of course, anything has risk. The key is managing that risk. And then when I say managing the risk can end up being very low. Then you can have stuff where the risk is very high, but I think also to even kind of consider what even is the actual risk. Some people just go, is it risky? If I walk around with a dollar bill hanging out of my back pocket, there's a big risk that I'm going to lose that dollar bill. But the risk is $1, so that is not a big deal. If I walk around with $1,000 hanging out of my back pocket, I have just as the risk is equal that I'll lose it, the same as the dollar bill, but now the risk is $1,000. So you need to consider that. And I'm going to get to that down here too, talking about price, that even if you do mess up, the risk is not that big of a deal compared to what the reward is if it goes right. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, with the stuff that I'm doing, I think the risk is non-existent. As long as you've got some just basic stuff in order first. A lot of people will be in a situation. I got a comment that I responded back to on the Homemade Home channel, people asking me how to do what they're doing, what I'm doing. I mean, then they'll say something that question was, could you please tell me how to find a house cheap like this? We have 3 kids, we can't pay our rent, and we can't find anything under $60,000. That's not the person that should probably go jumping on buying a house or even have the wherewithal, the time, and all that to do it. But there are moves that you can do to move in that direction. I made that video about how to what to do before you start investing. Now, of course, buying your own house, it can sort of be an investment, but it's not a true asset. It's a liability. You live in your house, you pay taxes, a mortgage, you pay insurance. Even if you buy it with cash, you've still got taxes and insurance. And then you've got water bills and all that kind of stuff. There's cost of living to stay there, versus a rental house is an asset because yes, you own the house. Yes, there's taxes and insurance on it, but it's making you money. It pays for its overhead, then it gives you money, so it's just passive income. So don't get me too excited, I'll get off topic. So let me just kind of dive into what I'm talking about here, and I wish I could find it's a person who left a comment named Canadude. Little Campbell soup can is their little picture, which is funny. And it says, I have a question. What factors does a house, let me talk to you at the camera, not over there where the sound will get messed up. I have a question. What factors does a house get to that is a smart to walk away from? So this is sometimes comments are a little tricky to read. I found a house that is in decent working class city, but a kind of a rough street. How can I tell if it's worth investing in? The houses are smaller homes that were built in the late 1800s, and I don't know how to measure risk of getting in over my head. And I think that question probably maybe answering himself, but I did answer that in a very long-winded way and ended it with, where's my camera? Meaning that I just wanted to make this video. It was a good topic. And I'm really enjoying making the videos this way, where sort of one video leads to the next. So compared to what? Someone says, what's the risk? I say, compared to what? What's your references? What are you even talking about? Doing what I'm doing, buying a junky house, could be extremely risky for some people, but it's just because they're going to get in over their head. They're not going to know what to do with it, and then it's just going to be something they owe taxes on and blah, blah, blah. But, again, I'm buying stuff cheap. What's your financial situation? You need to be prepared to spend the money on buying the houses and renovating the houses. And not that I would want to lose one dime of the money I spend on these houses, but you do need to consider that saying of don't invest money you can't lose. But again, we're going to go to this next one in a second. If you buy something for less than it's worth, you can just sell it. Real estate is not very liquid. It is going to take a little bit of time and effort to sell it. But if you buy something really cheap and then you can sell it for just a little more, and that price is still a good deal. Somebody's going to buy it, I promise, as long as you're in the market that's possible. And that's a lot of people tell me constantly is, I can't do what you're doing in my area. If I came to your area, I would just play the game different and do another version of what I'm doing. So don't get hung up on that it's not the same as the way I'm doing it. You might be thinking about it in the same terms as what I'm doing it, but in reality, what you have in your area could be so much more profitable in the end, even if it costs you a little bit more. There's always a way to make some money. One of my best deals, I did not have enough money to get anywhere near close buying the house, and I ended up doing a deal anyway and making more money than I've ever made at one time in my life. And that was basically through wholesaling a house. I didn't have the money to buy it, but I still signed the contract like I was, and I ended up finding another buyer and got it sold for a higher price, and I kept the difference between my original contract price and how much I sold it to the second buyer for, basically the end buyer. And I just assigned the contract over to them. So there's always ways to work the deal even if you don't have enough money. So that's what I'm saying here. Sorry, I'm getting off topic. Compared to what's your financial situation? You need to have yourself straight before you start doing stuff like this. Otherwise, it's going to basically slow down your long-term growth in this area if you just jump on the first thing like I did with my $5,000 house, the original one. I probably would have been better off if I would have skipped that house, kept increasing my sort of financial knowledge in this area, and then just bought that second house that I bought and then went from there. The first one slowed me down, cost me money, but I did learn a lot, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Next thing I want to touch on is in the compared to what section. Is it compared to not doing it? Because if it's compared to not doing it, I think that it is negative risk in doing real estate. Not doing anything is risky. So many people just kind of go about their life not doing anything at all, just thinking they're playing it safe, but they are just, I feel like, digging a hole that could be very tricky. This isn't everybody, but I'm talking about an average guy like me. I'm self-employed, making furniture in my basement and selling it to customers. If that's all I did, I'd be toasted later on. I've got a family that I need to support. I've got, cost of living that I need to pay for. And none of that comes with any kind of benefits or an employer contributing to some sort of retirement account. There's nothing. It's the money I make, and then the money I make is taxed higher basically than the money you're making, because I don't have an employer contributing to the Social Security stuff. What's it, the FICA that comes out of your paycheck that you can see, and that is a very high percentage. That is about 15% or so. So I am paying all of that when I am making and selling furniture and paying taxes on that money. So that made me look to passive income, and that's how I came to this. When I say not doing it, let's consider what a lot of people do spend their money on, and I think that I'm probably going to talk about something that's in the lower part, but that's okay. A lot of people have mortgages. Let's just say that mortgage is $1,000, and that's sort of, I'd say, middle of the road. You got people with much higher mortgages than that. So $1,000 mortgage, a couple $100 worth of car payments a month, and then all those other miscellaneous things that you can pay for that are just novelties, fun things throughout the month. That adds up to a lot of money, and I guarantee you, a lot of the people watching this video that have those costs I just listed are spending more a month than I spend in real estate each month. For me, I'm buying a house, say it's a $9,000 house, average that out over a year. If I just do one house that year, it's less than $1,000 a month to have bought that house. Then say I spend $500 to $1,000 a month on a renovation. Let's just say there's $2,000 a month throughout a year for me to end up with another house. And then keep in mind, each house I buy is that much more income that I just contribute back to this. So that's where you get kind of into the compound interest, where I am investing my money in the real estate, then the interest is the rent that's coming off of it, then I take the rent and I put it right back into buying more houses or renovating houses. It becomes very powerful, and it really doesn't take that long to sort of see it, but it will take a little time to get enough stuff going on to where it really is making a big difference. But the mental aspect of seeing it work and knowing you did it, that's huge. So think about the fact of not doing it. Think about taking all that money that you're wasting doing other stuff. Now, of course, there are certain things that certain people in certain situations have to do. Not having a mortgage on the house you live in has been a huge thing for me, but I know it's not possible for everybody. But you can control what house you buy and how much you end up paying. Especially if you're in a situation similar to me as when I got started. I didn't even have a girlfriend at the time. I was just a man on a mission, focused on what I was doing. And but then over time my responsibilities have gone up. But luckily I started some of this stuff before those responsibilities hit me, and I've been able to kind of keep up with it, or even outpace it in reality. Buy low, sell high. Again, with the houses I'm buying, this $9,000 house that I'm currently working on, I think that it was probably worth about $20,000 to $30,000 as is in this market. I get people telling me all the time that my numbers are wrong, but I don't talk about where I live exactly for many, many reasons. Not just to do with I don't want y'all to know where my houses are, because I have other business stuff that I do in my name, and I don't want to tie my name and my location to this stuff, and then this stuff is popular, and then that's going to affect Google, and when somebody searches for something to do with my tables, for example, it would be swamped with a bunch of videos, and no one would see my tables and buy them from me. So that's one of the reasons, and I appreciate people respecting that and not questioning it too much, or not that they don't question it, but just that people understand why I don't just spill the beans on every last personal bit of information that I have. So buy low, sell high. If in my case I'm buying a house for $9,000 that could sell for $30,000 or $40,000, where's the risk in that? If I want to, I can immediately sell that house as is, and basically acting as a middleman, selling it off to another investor. Or I do what I do, I keep it, I fix it, and then I rent it out. Then I've got that long-term income, the house is appreciating, and then down the road I can sell the house for a whole lot more than I paid for it, or even how much it was worth at the time when I did the renovation. And then all along it's making passive income, which again is not subject to all of the taxes that my other income is subject to. I think that's the best thing. Just buy stuff for less than it's worth, and you really can't go wrong with that, because you can always usually sell something to someone for the amount that it's worth, or slightly under, even, and then they get a deal, and then you make some profit off of it. House not worth that much. A lot of people will see these houses, they're rough, and then they'll say that house ain't worth that much, or whatever it is I claim. Again, they don't know the local market that I'm dealing with. A lot of people think that these houses that I've got are in the middle of nowhere on some crime-ridden street. I would not buy them if that was the case. Half the houses I own are on the street that I live on. I could hit them with a baseball if I wanted to on a really good day. It's just the street that I bought things on. There's enough houses on that street that are in bad condition that have basically just brought the street down enough in value, but now I own most of those rough houses, so I can bring the entire value of the street back up. Also, each house that I buy, there's a situation. A lot of people are thinking that the price is determining what sort of the value is in this area, the market value of the places I'm buying. Again, I've bought houses for $8,000 that are worth about $50,000. I bought a house for $2,000. It's worth about $20,000 or $30,000. It's stuff like that. So the numbers that I'm getting stuff are just these super deals that I'm getting through doing stuff that I talk about in my ebook. And again, I'm just buying stuff super, super cheap. Even the normal price is relatively cheap in the scheme of things. But I'm just buying things at a deep discount. Sorry, I got myself distracted just then and flustered. So house not worth that much. I'm happy when a house isn't worth that much that I want to rent. That means the property taxes aren't as high. That means the insurance on the house isn't going to be as high. If you have a $200,000 tax-assessed house, you're going to be paying $200,000 type of taxes, and your insurance is going to be higher and everything. My taxes on this house I'm sitting in right now, I bought for $11,000, spent about $20,000 renovating this house. I think my taxes are about $400 a year, and I'm in the city, so county taxes are even less. So it's $300 or $400 a year. Then the insurance on this house is about $250, I think, versus houses right up the street from me are assessed at like $175, $200, and property taxes $500 a month. So that's a big deal. That's a big deal, especially it's a big cost when you're renting a house out too. So I like it when houses aren't worth much, because it doesn't matter how much it's worth. The only thing I care about is how much money is it actually producing. So I don't care what the market value is. I don't care what the tax assessments are. I prefer those things be low during the time that I'm renting them, and then I can do something about that when I want to sell them. I could have this house re-taxed, have a tax assessment done on it. They would raise it up, and then that would, but even then I would prefer to sell it to someone, say, look, hey, it's currently taxed low. I can keep it that way, or I can have it, a new assessment done on it if it makes you feel better. But I think most people would just prefer the low taxes. So don't worry about if something doesn't seem like it's worth that much. The only thing that matters is its location, which is what we're talking about next. Location and the condition of it. The condition of it will basically tell you how much you pay and then how much you have to put into it. That's your total number. And then you can say, wow, for, I have $30,000 in this house. I'm going to rent it out for, $600, $700, $800. That's a good return. In my area, people who just kind of go about buying this stuff in a more regular way, working with real estate agents, buying things that are publicly for sale through a sign in the yard or it's on the MLS, they're spending $80,000, $100,000 to end up with houses that rent for probably $800 to $1,000. So I'm buying houses for about 10, investing about 10 more in a renovation, and then renting them out for just $100 or $200 less. So I would rather have the houses that I have where I could buy multiple houses for the same amount they're getting one out of. Because I think if you're spending that much money on single family, houses, that's you're getting into a lot. You get into that amount of money where you can start to try to look for some sort of like duplex, triplexes, small apartment type buildings, and then do some improvements on it. And then you got more units within sort of under one roof. Location, who will rent it? I think this is going into risk. People asked me, this person said that it was a slightly rough neighborhood. So if it's a slightly rough neighborhood, you're probably dealing with at least slightly rough tenants. And this is an area that a lot of people are going to have a hard time kind of hearing, but poor neighborhoods, rougher neighborhoods, you're going to deal with tenants that have a lot of variables going on in their lives to where it's not going to make as much difference to them how they treat the place. If you're renting to somebody who is an average person that's renting because they're new to the area, because they're trying to get their credit right, their money straight to buy a house themselves, whatever the reason, they're building credit, they want good references, they just clean living in general, they're employed, they've got families, they've got stuff that's kind of keeping them on track. A lot of people who don't have money, don't have jobs, this is based on my experience, I'm not just assuming this, it's based on the people I've dealt with renting in rougher areas. They've got all day to think of a bunch of stuff, and a lot of times it's just nonsense. It's a lot of hanging out at the houses. I've had houses where I rent the house out to 3 people, parents and a child, and then on average when I'd show up to do something, about 15 people just in the house hanging out. I've had the door, I've opened, knocked on the door and had a woman answer the door in like leopard print lingerie, and there's like bunches of people there including children, and then she didn't even bat an eye. It was just, that's the normal. So I mean, it's just crazy stuff. So the better the house, the better the tenant. Location is going to make a big difference. You've got the option of renting through programs such as Section 8, but when you do that, that doesn't change the tenant. That just changes who's paying the rent, and the headache of dealing with something that's not at least as close to optimal as possible is usually not worth it. And the thing I think that can kind of keep that from happening is just work with a property manager. Property managers oftentimes won't even manage properties in certain areas because they know they're too much trouble. So they'll say, I've called them before on one house that I own. They said, we don't manage stuff in that area. Just straight up, they just don't do it. Because they know statistic-wise that it's just not going to work out good. And a lot of people are too sensitive, too emotional, too politically correct to acknowledge any of that stuff. And this has nothing to do with race, to be clear. It's just people situations come with a lot of other variables, and so you have to watch that. And a lot of times, people's situations, sometimes people will hear poor, and they think that just has to do with how much money somebody has, but that could do with all different hosts of issues that you just don't want to become your problem. So I feel funny even mentioning that right now. If you can tell, I kind of feel uncomfortable saying it, but it is just the truth when it comes to this type of stuff. Who will The other thing with a property manager, they're doing the renting out. You're not doing it, so you're not personally going to get accused of doing anything. And the property managers, it's a big business. They run everybody through the normal stuff, so they are not. They're not. What's the word? I'm not coming up with it. They're not judging somebody by who they are just when they look at them. They just look at them. Basically, it's an application. They don't even know anything about you. They get an application. It's got your name, your current address, your landlord's information. Then they background check you. They do all that kind of stuff. And a lot of people have problems with that. They think it's bad that people look into people that are going to live in a house you own and have signed a contract to pay you a certain amount of money. But you just have to go about it right. And I was bad at doing that when I was doing it on my own starting out. So that's why I've just moved to the headache-free version of using a property manager. Got 10.5 minutes to finish this video before I fill my card up. Ignorance versus knowledge. Most people think things are risky just because they're ignorant on the situation. Ignorance is like the worst thing in the world most of the time. This is where assumptions occur. This is where mistakes happen. This is where it's just dumb. Don't try not to be ignorant in an area that you're going to have a strong opinion on or be involved in. Knowledge is easy to access. We live in the day of the internet. There is nothing you can't find out or get someone's opinion on the internet. I do it all the time. People ask me, how do you know so much stuff? I just look it up. I've watched videos of people just like me back when I had no experience talking about certain things. And you got to kind of get a good average, because what I'm saying might not apply at all to one person. Then everything I'm saying could be 100% spot on for the next. And then there's people all in between. So don't get hung up on what any one person says. But always increasing your knowledge in the area that you want to succeed in or move towards or whatever it is, you've got to keep doing it. I'm constantly doing it. I listen to stuff, I read things. I'm not a big reader. I usually audiobook version everything because I'm too busy like doing stuff, and I can listen to things while I work on certain things. But just always increase your knowledge. And one reason I like buying houses the way I have is because each one that I buy has increased my sort of financial knowledge, how to make deals happen. It's kind of like if you have to knock on a door and try to sell somebody something and they don't even know you're coming, how hard that would be, but do it 1,000 times and you wouldn't even care anymore. One of the things that I did after I got out of college is I did this position in a different state, and every single, it was either Wednesday or Thursday, I had to give a presentation about the work that I did at this place. And it was between, I'd say, 50 to 200 people. It could vary. And I'm not somebody who's like super shy, but I'm not the guy at the party who's like running his mouth and being the show either. This is easy for me. I'm talking to a camera in my basement. My wife's not even here. She's at the grocery store. There's no pressure right now. I'm literally talking to myself. And so this type of thing is easy. So talking in front of a big crowd of people, that was like something I was like not super uncomfortable with the idea. But it wasn't like this at first, and but by the time I got done with that, after doing it for a year every single week, I got very comfortable with it. I got to the point where I could make a whole crowd of people laugh over stuff, and that is, again, that just falls right into my experiences and the knowledge that I have. So now I'm comfortable with kind of dealing with people like that. And as you learn more, you're going to get more comfortable with everything. And then that makes you kind of like get addicted to learning. I think that is one part of it. I was just talking to my wife about this the other day, is that once you start doing one thing, it's almost like you're attracting the knowledge. And my comparison out of my book was, if you want like a red Mustang or something like that, all of a sudden it just seems like you're going to see red Mustangs are everywhere. So once you kind of get into something, say it's real estate investing, you're going to be like keyed in to when that information is available to you, not just when you go find a book and open it up. You might be on the internet and there'll be some article on the side and the word real estate is all in your head, and you might click on it, read it, and learn something new. So avoid this and look for that price. When I'm buying a house for $9,000, these are cash deals. I have that actual money. It's not money that I'm going and looking for and borrowing it from people. And then everything else I do pays for my cost of living. So this is going to sound nuts, But if I lit $9,000 on fire, it would not be anywhere near close to the end of the world because my stuff continually pays my cost of living. So with my income being greater than the outgoing money, I'm able to save money little by little, and then that gets me up to however much money I need. It's usually between $10,000 and $15,000 saved, and then I put that down on a house immediately, basically as soon as I get enough money to do it. Not just saving a bunch of money to save a bunch of money. I think that's a waste of time. You can put your money to work, not just have your money just sitting there, because what are you going to do with it in the end? If you can, your money sitting in a bank is like going in reverse, even if it has interest on it, versus if you put it in a house and you have $10,000, you buy a house that's worth $20,000 for 10, you've doubled your money basically right off the bat, and then that $20,000 investment is going to start making $600, $700, $800 a month. There's like nothing else like that. That's this consistent, this old, this standard, and it's just out there for everybody. And if I sound like I'm excited, it's because I am excited. I've been doing this for like 8 or 9 years now, and I'm still this excited about it. And I'm so blown away how some people are so resistant to stuff like this, yet be so interested in it in the first place. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we're talking about houses and homes, and people attach themselves to the idea of home so much, and they're not really considering what a house really is. I can go to Lowe's and buy everything that's in this house, and then I just assemble it, and then it's just a pile of materials. So I think people get too sentimental about the idea of home. I compare it to, this house is no different to me than a car is to a taxi driver. This is just a vehicle for making money to me. And it's just one that I understand. It's one that I've gained the skills to be able to kind of do and handle and so forth. So you buy it cheap enough, and you're buying it with money that you can afford to lose. And again, I would cry like a baby if I lost $9,000, but in the end, I'm okay. I would be able to recover from it. So I don't consider that really all that risky. Insured investment. Compare real estate, houses. I hope my camera doesn't run out of time. If it does, I'm going to have to kind of get some off of it, and I'll be right back. All of my houses have insurance on them. They can burn down to the ground, and I'm going to get money back off that. Compare that to your 401k, your pensions at work, and your Roth IRAs or traditional IRAs. You're hoping that that stuff's okay, and I have that. I have a Roth IRA set up. I contribute to it, kind of against what I consider my better judgment, but it's just something I do anyway. And it's something I suggest people do, because if people don't follow through with this, at least you got that started. And I think for people who aren't of the mindset, can't handle the workload, can't handle the long-term commitments of all that stuff, it is good to do this no matter what. Maybe once you get to a certain point, you can go, you know what, that's not the best thing for me to do anymore. And then you can just stop then and consider what you're going to do with that money. But there's like no other investment that you can have insured like this. Most everything else is speculative. It's stuff that you hope works out. You hope the money's there down the road, but it might not be. With this, the entire time I own this investment, I'm making money off of it, and there's insurance on it. And that's just built into the cost, the overhead, which is a tax write-off. Now, of course, it's still money that had to be spent, but it comes off of the amount that I'm getting taxed, all the insurance. That is a very exciting and kind of powerful aspect of all this that you can't forget. And that kind of ties right into control of the investment. When you do these traditional investments, or if you're investing in cryptocurrencies, and I get that too, but again, I'm doing everything knowing what the risk is and whether or not I can afford it. I'm not in control of a lot of stuff. It's just all a guess, and someone else is managing it. You hope it goes okay. But when I have a piece of real estate that turns into a rental property, I'm picking renters, or I'm picking my manager that then picks the renters. I can control, make sure the roof is good on it, all that kind of stuff. I am in control of it as much as I can be in control of it. So that's the end of the board. I'm sure there's a lot more to say on this topic, but I don't want to go on and on and on too much. I think this is plenty to kind of get things going, talking about this, to just kind of alleviate people's worries about this. It's not risky. Of course, again, there are ways to make it risky if you don't prepare ahead of time, but don't be afraid of it because of some perceived risk based off of your ignorance. Don't worry about being, about it being risky, because once you know actually what's going on, you're going to realize it's not risky and that it's just a great way to make money. And of course, everything on this channel so far has been me talking about real estate, but this can apply to a lot of different types of investing. This is just where my experience lies, and this is how I'm kind of kicking things off. And as I dive into more things down the road, we'll talk about that, and I'll let you know what I'm looking into and so forth. But I appreciate you all watching. Thank you for kind of your continued watching across the channels, and I do hope you hit the thumbs up, all that, share the channel, leave a comment, ask questions. We'll see where things go. Thanks for watching. See you next time.